The alarm screamed through the corridors of Odyssey 7 space station, and everyone started running. Taekwon had just finished loading supplies onto his cargo ship when the explosion shook the entire docking bay. Metal groaned, lights flickered, and people pushed past him in panic, trying to reach the evacuation shuttles. Tae stood still for a moment, his instincts from his military days kicking in. He had been a medic once, before he became a cargo hauler. That training never left him. While others ran away from danger, he found himself moving toward it. The explosion had come from the lower maintenance tunnels. Station security was trying to seal off the area, but Tae slipped past them in the chaos. Smoke filled the narrow passages, and the emergency lights cast everything in red. He pulled his shirt over his mouth and kept moving forward. That was when he heard it. A small sound, barely audible over the cracking of metal and the hiss of leaking gases. It sounded like crying. A child crying. Tae ran toward the sound, jumping over fallen debris and ducking under twisted pipes. The heat was intense, and warning signs flashed everywhere, telling him the section was about to be sealed off permanently. He had maybe 5 minutes before the station's automatic systems would close the blast doors forever. He found her trapped under a collapsed beam. She was small, no bigger than a 6-year-old human child, but she was clearly not human. Her skin looked like it was made of crystal or silver, and it seemed to glow with a soft light. Strange markings covered her arms and face, pulsing weakly. She was hurt badly. Tae did not hesitate. He grabbed the beam and pulled with all his strength. His muscles burned, and for a terrible moment he thought he was not strong enough. Then the beam shifted, just enough. He dragged the child free and scooped her into his arms. She was so light, but something was wrong. Her breathing was rapid and shallow, and her skin was turning darker, the glow fading. Tae had never treated an alien before, but he recognized the signs of someone dying. The air here was toxic to her somehow. He looked around frantically and spotted an emergency supply box on the wall. Inside was a basic environmental suit, the kind maintenance workers used. It was too big for the child, but Tae worked fast, wrapping it around her and sealing it as best he could. He adjusted the oxygen mixture, guessing at what she might need. The child's eyes opened. They were large and completely silver, with no pupils that Tae could see. She looked at him with fear and confusion, then she whispered something in a language he did not understand. "I've got you," Tae said, even though he knew she probably could not understand him either. "I'm getting you out of here." The blast doors started closing. Tae ran, carrying the child against his chest, protecting her head with one hand. The corridors were a maze, and parts of them had collapsed. He had to backtrack twice, finding alternate routes, all while the countdown in his head kept ticking. 3 minutes left, then 2. He reached the main corridor just as the final evacuation shuttle was preparing to leave. The pilot, a woman named Hai-Soon, who worked on Tae's crew, was waving frantically at him from the door. "Tae! Come on! They're sealing the section!" Tae ran harder than he had ever run in his life. His lungs burned, his legs screamed at him to stop, but he kept going. He could hear the massive blast doors grinding closed behind him, could feel the change in air pressure. He jumped through the shuttle door just as it started to close. Hai-Soon pulled him inside, and the door sealed shut. 3 seconds later, they heard the massive boom of the blast doors closing behind them. They had made it. The shuttle launched immediately, pulling away from the damaged station. Tae collapsed on the floor, still holding the alien child. His crew members, Jin Woo and Kang Min, stared at him with wide eyes. "What were you thinking?" Jin Woo demanded. "You almost died." Tae could not answer. He was trying to catch his breath, and he was more worried about the child. He gently laid her down and checked her vital signs as best he could. The makeshift environmental suit seemed to be working. Her breathing had steadied, and the glow was returning to her skin. "Is that a Valoran?" Kang Min asked, his voice filled with shock. Tay, do you know what you just did? The Valorans they're not exactly friendly with humans. Tay looked up at his navigator. She's a child. That's all that matters. The shuttle docked with Tay's ship, the Wandering Star, and they quickly moved the child to the medical bay. It was not much, just a small room with basic equipment, but it was clean and safe. Tay carefully removed the damaged environmental suit and replaced it with a proper medical isolation field. He monitored her closely, adjusting the atmospheric mix until her readings stabilized. Hours passed. The rest of the crew left him alone, knowing better than to disturb him when he was focused. Tay sat beside the medical bed, watching the alien child sleep. She was so small, so fragile. What had she been doing on a human station? Why had someone tried to blow it up? Finally, her eyes opened. She looked around in confusion, then her gaze settled on Tay. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then the child spoke, her voice weak but clear. She was speaking in basic human standard, though her accent was strange. "You came back," she said. "Everyone else ran." Tay felt something tighten in his chest. He managed a small smile. "Yeah, I came back." "Why?" the child asked. "I am not your kind. You're a kid who needed help," Tay said simply. "That's enough." The child stared at him with those strange silver eyes. Then, slowly, she reached out and touched his hand with her small crystalline fingers. "My name is Lyra," she said. "I'm Tay," he replied. "You're safe now, Lyra. I promise." He had no idea how wrong he was about that. He had no idea that saving this one child would change his entire life forever. At that moment, all he knew was that he had done the right thing, and that was enough. Outside the ship's viewports, stars glittered in the endless dark of space. Somewhere out there, people were looking for Princess Lyra, and when they found her, nothing would ever be the same again. Tay woke up to the sound of alarms. Not the emergency kind, but the kind that meant his ship's sensors had detected something big, very big. He stumbled out of his quarters and rushed to the bridge, where Jin Woo was staring at the scanner display with his mouth open. "Tell me that's not what I think it is," Tay said. 12 Valoran capital ships," Jin Woo replied, his voice barely a whisper. "They just appeared out of nowhere. We're surrounded." Tay felt his stomach drop. The Wandering Star was a small cargo vessel, barely armed. One Valoran warship could destroy them in seconds. 12 of them could vaporize his ship without even slowing down. "Incoming transmission," Kang Min announced from the communications station. "Put it through," Tay said, trying to keep his voice steady. The view screen lit up, and Tay found himself looking at the most intimidating person he had ever seen. She was tall and regal, with the same crystalline skin as Lyra, but hers shifted through colors like a living rainbow. Her silver eyes seemed to look right through him, and she wore robes that looked like they were made of starlight. "I am Queen Nara of the Valoran Empire," she said, her voice cold and commanding. "You have my daughter aboard your vessel. You will allow me to board immediately, or I will take her by force." Tay swallowed hard. "Your Majesty, your daughter is safe. I rescued her from the explosion on Odyssey 7. I was bringing her—" "Silence," Queen Nara interrupted. "I did not ask for your words. I asked for access to my child." Tay looked at his crew, then back at the screen. They had no choice. "Permission granted, Your Majesty." The connection ended. Minutes later, Tay felt the slight shudder that meant another ship had docked with his. He went to the airlock to meet them, his heart pounding. Behind him, Haya soon whispered, "Should we be armed?" "With what?" Tay replied. "Our cargo pistols against the Valoran Royal Guard? We just make them angry." The airlock opened, and soldiers poured through. They were tall and imposing, carrying weapons that hummed with energy. They moved through the ship quickly and efficiently, checking every corner. Then Queen Nara herself stepped aboard. She had to duck slightly to fit through the doorway, and her presence seemed to fill the entire corridor. She looked at Tay with those piercing eyes, and he felt like she could see every thought in his head. "Where is she?" the Queen demanded. "Medical bay," Tay said. "This way." He led her through his small ship, very aware of how shabby everything must look to someone who commanded an empire. The medical bay door opened, and Lyra was sitting up in the bed. When she saw her mother, her face lit up with joy. "Mother!" she cried out, and Queen Nara rushed to her side. The transformation was instant. The cold, commanding ruler disappeared, replaced by a mother who was clearly terrified she had lost her child. Queen Nara gathered Lyra into her arms, and her skin flashed through a dozen colors that Tay did not understand. She was speaking in her native language, too fast for the translator to keep up. Lyra responded, also in Valoran, and Tay caught his name several times. The little princess kept pointing at him while she spoke to her mother. Finally, Queen Nara looked up at Tay. Her expression was different now, confused and searching. "My daughter says you ran into danger to save her. She says others fled, but you came toward the explosion." "Yes, Your Majesty," Tay said simply. "Why?" the Queen asked. "You did not know who she was. You risked your life for a stranger, for an alien child." Tay shrugged. She needed help. That's all that mattered. Queen Nara stood slowly, studying him. "You are very strange, human. My soldiers have reviewed the security footage from Odyssey 7. They show you had no part in the attack. They show you carrying my daughter through 3 kilometers of collapsing tunnels. They show you using your own medical supplies, supplies that were clearly expensive, to save her life." "I'm glad she's okay," Tay said. "You do not understand what you have done," Queen Nara said, and her voice had changed again. It was not cold anymore, but it was not warm either. It was formal, ceremonial. "You have saved the life of a royal daughter of the Valoran Empire. By the ancient laws of my people, I am bound to you by Kormatha, the life debt that can never be repaid." Tay did not like the sound of that. "Your Majesty, really, there's no need." "There is every need," Queen Nara interrupted. "From this moment, you are keeper brother to the royal family. You and your crew are under my protection. You will be honored, respected, and kept safe forever." "That's very generous," Tay said carefully. "But I have cargo runs to make, contracts to fulfill. I need to get back to work." Queen Nara's skin flashed a color that Tay would later learn meant absolute determination. "You do not understand. In my culture, one who saves royal blood becomes part of the royal household. You cannot simply leave. Your old life has ended. A new one begins." Tay felt panic rising in his chest. "Wait. What do you mean I can't leave?" "I mean exactly that," Queen Nara said. "Your vessel will be taken into my flagship. You and your crew will live aboard the Eternal Crown as honored guests. You will want for nothing." "But we don't want to be honored guests," Jinwoo spoke up from behind Tai. "We want to go home." Queen Nara looked at the pilot with an expression that could have frozen stars. "That is not possible. The Keeper Brother must be protected. All who serve him must be protected. This is our way." Tay tried to think fast. "Your Majesty, please understand. In human culture, we appreciate kindness, but we also value freedom. We don't expect payment for doing the right thing. Just let us go and we'll all be happy." "No," Queen Nara said flatly. "You do not understand the debt. It is absolute. It is eternal. If I allowed you to leave, my own people would see me as dishonorable. I would lose the respect of my subjects. This cannot happen." Before Tay could argue further, he felt the ship shudder. He looked at Jin Woo, who checked his console and nodded grimly. They were being pulled into the larger ship's hangar bay by a tractor beam. "Your Majesty," Tay said, trying to keep his voice calm. "You're basically taking us prisoner." Queen Nara's skin shifted to a color that looked almost sad. "I am protecting you. I am honoring you. I know you cannot understand this now, but in time, you will see. You gave my daughter a second life. Your old life is over. This is your home now." Lyra tugged on her mother's hand. "Mother, don't scare him. He's nice." Queen Nara looked down at her daughter, then back at Tai. "I do not mean to frighten you." "Human, but you must understand I will not allow you to leave, ever." The way she said that last word sent chills down Tay's spine. This was not a request. This was not a temporary situation. He had saved a child's life, and now he was trapped in a cage made of honor and gratitude. As his ship was pulled into the massive Valoran flagship, Tay looked at his crew. They all wore the same expression, fear mixed with disbelief. They had just become prisoners of the most powerful empire in this sector of space, and there was absolutely nothing they could do about it. Queen Nara placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture that might have been meant as comforting, but felt more like a claim of ownership. "Come," she said. "Let me show you your new home." Tay had no choice but to follow. The quarters they gave Tay were larger than his entire ship had been. Crystal walls that changed color with the light, furniture that seemed to float, and a viewport that showed the endless stars. It was beautiful and luxurious, and it felt like a prison. He had been aboard the Eternal Crown for 3 days, and he had not been allowed to leave his assigned section of the ship. Guards stood at every corridor junction, always polite, always respectful, and always blocking his way when he tried to explore. His crew had their own quarters nearby. They met in Ty's room each evening to talk, to plan, to try to figure out how to escape. But the more they learned about Valoran technology, the more hopeless it seemed. "Their ships can jump through something they call quantum fold space," Hai soon explained. She had been trying to study their engines from what little she could observe. "We're probably hundreds of light years from human space by now. Even if we stole a shuttle, we'd never make it home." "There has to be a way," Jinwoo insisted. "We can't just stay here forever." But Tay was not so sure anymore. Every day he saw more of Valoran culture, and every day he understood better just how serious Queen Nara had been. The life debt was not just tradition. It was law, custom, and religion all wrapped into one. Breaking it would be unthinkable to them. The door chimed, and before Tay could respond, it opened. Princess Lyra bounced in, followed by a tired-looking guard who clearly could not keep up with her energy. "Tay," she said happily, using the nickname she had given him. "I brought you something." She held up what looked like a crystal box. When she opened it, the most amazing smell filled the room. It reminded Tay of cinnamon and honey, but also something entirely alien. "It's sweet fire cake," Lyra explained. "It's my favorite. I wanted you to try it." Tay could not help but smile. Despite everything, Lyra had become a bright spot in his days. She visited him constantly, asking a million questions about humans and Earth and everything he had ever seen or done. "Thank you, Lyra," he said, taking a small piece of the cake. It tasted as amazing as it smelled. "Tell me another story about Earth," Lyra begged, settling herself on the floating couch. "Tell me about the oceans again." So Tay told her about oceans, about waves crashing on beaches, about swimming and surfing and all the things he used to do as a child. Lyra listened with her eyes wide, completely fascinated. "I want to see Earth someday," she said wistfully. "Mother says it's too dangerous, but I want to see water that goes on forever." "Maybe someday," Tay said, though he doubted it would ever happen. Over the following weeks, something strange began to happen. Lyra's siblings started visiting too. First came Prince Doran, the oldest, who was curious about human technology. Then Princess Sela, who wanted to learn about human music. Finally, even young Prince Varix showed up, though he mostly just stared at Tay like he was some kind of exotic animal. Tay found himself becoming a teacher, an entertainer, and a storyteller. He taught them card games, showed them pictures from his old life, and answered their endless questions. The royal children were not what he had expected. They were smart, curious, and surprisingly kind. Queen Nara started visiting too. At first, she came only to check on Lyra, staying for just a few minutes before leaving. But gradually, her visits grew longer. She would ask questions about human culture, about his life before the rescue, about his family. "I have a sister," Tay told her one evening. "Her name is Mira. She lives on Earth in a city called Busan. I used to visit her between cargo runs." "She must miss you," Queen Nara said, and there was something in her voice that sounded almost sad. "I miss her too," Tay admitted. "I miss a lot of things about my old life." The Queen's skin shifted to a darker shade. "I know this is difficult for you. I know you feel trapped. But you must understand, if I let you go, others would see it as weakness. They would question my rule. The life debt is sacred." "But I never asked for any of this," Tay said, frustration bleeding into his voice. "I just helped a kid. That's what anyone should do." "No," Queen Nara said firmly. "That is what humans might do. But Valorans would not. If a commoner saw a royal in danger, they would fetch help. They would never dare to touch royalty themselves. You did something that goes against everything my people understand." Tay looked at her, really looked at her. "Is that why you're so interested in humans? Because we're willing to break your rules?" Queen Nara was quiet for a long moment. "Perhaps," she finally said. "You are fascinating to me. All humans are. You have no proper hierarchy, no respect for bloodlines. Yet your people accomplish incredible things. You work together despite having no queen to command you. It is strange." "We call it democracy," Tay said with a small smile. "Everyone gets a voice." "Chaos," Queen Nara said, but she did not sound entirely disapproving. 2 months passed. Tay learned to read some of the color patterns that Valorans use to communicate emotion. He discovered he had been accidentally insulting people by standing too close, because personal space worked differently in their culture. He learned that Valorans could eat some human food but not others, and that the wrong spices could make them very sick. Hai soon spent her time studying their technology, her engineering mind unable to resist the challenge. Jin Woo became friends with a Valoran pilot named Rai, bonding over their shared love of dangerous flying maneuvers. Kang Min was recruited to help navigate through human space sectors, and he realized the Queen was planning something. "She wants to open trade with human worlds," Kang Min told them during one of their private meetings. "She's been asking me about safe routes, about which human governments might be willing to negotiate." "That could be our way out," Jin Woo said excitedly. "If she needs us to help with human relations, we could—" "No," Tay interrupted. "She'll just bring more Valorans who understand humans. She doesn't need us for that." He was right. As more weeks passed, Tay realized the Queen's interest in humanity had grown far beyond simple political advantage. She was genuinely curious, genuinely trying to understand, and somehow, without meaning to, Tay had become the center of that curiosity. One evening, after the children had left and the guards had retreated to a respectful distance, Queen Nara stayed longer than usual. She stood at the viewport, looking out at the stars. "I lost my mate 10 years ago," she said quietly. "He died in a border war. I raised 4 children alone. I built this empire through strength and determination. I learned never to show weakness, never to doubt, never to be soft." Tay stood beside her, waiting for her to continue. "Then you appeared," she said. "You ran toward danger when everyone else ran away. You saved my daughter not because she was royalty, not because you expected reward, but simply because it was right. You showed me something I had forgotten existed." "What's that?" Tay asked. Queen Nara turned to look at him, and her skin was glowing with colors he had never seen before. "Kindness without calculation, strength that comes from gentleness. You reminded me of things I thought I had to give up to be a good queen." "Your Majesty," Tay began, but she held up a hand. "I know I am keeping you prisoner," she said, and for the first time she sounded almost vulnerable. "I know this is wrong by your standards, but I cannot let you go. Not just because of the life debt, but because She paused, searching for words. "Because I need to remember what you showed me. I need you to stay." Tay felt a chill run down his spine. This was worse than he had thought. She was not just following tradition. She had become personally attached to what he represented. He was not just a prisoner of honor anymore. He was a prisoner of her need. "This has to end," Tay said firmly. "You can't keep me here forever." Queen Nara's expression hardened again. "I can. I will." She left without another word, and Tay was alone with the stars and the growing understanding that he was trapped in a cage that was stronger than any metal. The messages from Earth started arriving after 3 months. At first, they were simple queries. Where was Captain Tay Quan? Why had his ship disappeared? His company wanted answers. Then the messages became more urgent. His sister Mira was worried. The Earth Defense Force was making inquiries. Finally, the diplomatic messages began. Earth's government demanded to know why one of their citizens was being held by the Valoran Empire. They used words like kidnapping and unlawful detention. The Valoran Council responded with outrage, claiming Tay was an honored guest and that humans were being disrespectful of sacred traditions. Tay watched the tension grow from his comfortable prison. He listened to the news broadcasts that Kang Min managed to access. Human-Valoran relations, which had never been warm, were rapidly freezing over. Trade agreements were being canceled. Border patrols were increasing. Some of the more aggressive human colonies were talking about military action. "This is getting bad," Jin Woo said during one of their evening meetings. "There are people back home saying we should go to war over this." "That's insane," Hai Soon replied. "We'd lose. The Valoran Empire is 10 times larger than human space." "People don't care," Kang Min said quietly. "They see this as the Valorans thinking they can take humans whenever they want. It's about principle now, not about us." Tay said nothing. He felt the weight of every worsening news report like a stone on his chest. People might die because he had saved a child. Wars might start because he had done the right thing. The universe had a cruel sense of irony. He demanded another meeting with Queen Nara. She made him wait 3 days before agreeing to see him, and when she finally did, she looked tired. Her skin was duller than usual, and the colors that normally danced across it were muted. "I know why you want to speak with me," she said, before he could begin. "You want to talk about the tensions between our peoples." "Your Majesty, this is getting out of control," Tay said. "Let me go. Let my crew go. Tell everyone it was all a misunderstanding. We can fix this before it gets worse." "No," Queen Nara said, but her voice lacked its usual certainty. "I cannot." "The life debt." "Forget the life debt," Tay shouted, surprising himself with his anger. "Is your tradition worth starting a war? Is your honor worth people dying?" Queen Nara's skin flashed red, a color Tay had learned meant anger. "You do not understand what you ask. If I break the life debt, I lose everything. My people will not follow a queen who abandons sacred law. My enemies will use this against me. I will be seen as weak." "And if you start a war with humanity?" Tay demanded. "What will that cost you?" Before Queen Nara could answer, alarms started blaring throughout the ship. A guard burst into the room, speaking rapidly in Valoran. The Queen's skin went completely white, which Tay had learned meant shock or fear. "What's happening?" Tay asked. "We are under attack," Queen Nara said. The same terrorists who bombed Odyssey 7. They have found us. Everything happened very fast after that. The Eternal Crown shook as weapons fire struck its shields. Tay was rushed back toward his quarters by guards, but an explosion tore through the corridor ahead of them. The guards changed direction, pulling him toward an emergency shelter instead. They were halfway there when Tay saw her. Queen Nara was walking alone through a parallel corridor, heading toward the command center. And behind her, through a window into the damaged section, Tay saw movement. Someone was there, raising a weapon, aiming at the Queen's back. Tay did not think. He just moved. He broke away from the guards, ran across the intersection, and tackled Queen Nara to the ground just as a plasma bolt screamed through the space where she had been standing. The shot hit the wall instead, melting a hole through the crystal structure. The guards reacted immediately, firing at the attacker and sealing the damaged section. Tay rolled off the Queen, who stared up at him with wide silver eyes. "You saved me," she whispered. "Yeah," Tay said, his heart pounding. "I guess I did." But as he tried to stand, pain exploded in his side. He looked down and saw blood, his blood, spreading across his shirt. Part of the plasma bolt had clipped him. The guards were shouting, and someone was calling for medical help, but Tay's vision was going dark. The last thing he saw before passing out was Queen Nara's face above his, and the colors swirling across her skin in patterns he had never seen before. When Tay woke up, he was in the medical center. Machines surrounded him, some human design and some Valoran. His side hurt, but it was a distant, manageable pain. Whatever they had given him was working. Hai Soon was sitting beside his bed, and she looked relieved when his eyes opened. "You scared us," she said. "The Valoran doctor said their technology can't fully heal human tissue. They've been working with human medical databases trying to figure out what to do." "How long was I out?" Tay asked. 2 days, Hai Soon replied. "The terrorist attack was stopped. They caught the attackers. And Tay, the Queen has been here the whole time. She's barely left your side." As if summoned by those words, Queen Nara entered the room. She looked exhausted, her skin pale and the colors almost completely absent. When she saw Tay was awake, something shifted in her expression. She came to his bedside and did something completely unexpected. She knelt down, placing herself lower than him, which Tay had learned was a huge gesture in Valoran culture. Royalty never knelt to anyone. "I heard you," Queen Nara said softly. "While you were unconscious, the medical staff said humans sometimes talk in their sleep, so I stayed to listen. I heard you calling for your sister. I heard you saying you just wanted to go home." Tay did not know what to say. "I also heard something else," the Queen continued. "I heard you crying. I heard the sounds of someone who has been holding pain inside for too long, and it finally escaped while you could not control it." Tears started running down Tay's face before he could stop them. He was embarrassed, but he was also too tired to pretend anymore. Queen Nara reached out and gently touched his hand. "I have been selfish," she said. "I told myself I was following tradition, following honor. But the truth is more complicated. I lost my mate. I raised my children alone. I built walls around my heart because I had to be strong. Then you appeared and showed me what I had lost. You showed me kindness, sacrifice, gentleness, and I held on to you because I was afraid of losing that feeling again." "Your Majesty," Tay began, but she shook her head. "I have been keeping you prisoner," Queen Nara said, and her voice broke. "I told myself it was honor, but it was fear. Fear of being alone again. Fear of losing the one person who reminded me I could feel something other than duty." She stood up slowly. "I am going to let you go," she said. "But I want to ask you something first. Not as a queen to a subject, but as one person to another." "What?" Tay asked. "Help me," Queen Nara said simply. Help me build a bridge between our peoples. Not as my prisoner, not as someone bound by debt, but as someone who chooses to do it. I know I have no right to ask this after what I have done to you, but I am asking anyway." Tay looked at her, really looked at her. He saw someone who was powerful but lonely, someone who had spent so long being strong that she had forgotten how to be soft. Someone who was, in her own way, just as trapped as he had been. "Make me your ambassador," Tay said. "Let me travel between our worlds. I'll help you build that bridge, but I need freedom to do it. I need to be able to go home, to see my sister, to choose to come back." "Yes," Queen Nara said immediately. "Yes to all of that." "And my crew goes free too," Tay added. "Of course." Tay smiled weakly. "Then we have a deal, Your Majesty." For the first time since he had met her, Queen Nara smiled back. It transformed her face completely. The agreement took weeks to finalize. Queen Nara insisted on certain conditions, and Tay had to agree to some of them. He would spend 4 months each year aboard the Eternal Crown, serving as a cultural advisor and helping the royal family understand humanity. He would carry the title of Keeper Brother and represent Valoran interests in human space. His crew would become the first joint human-Valoran diplomatic team. The condition that surprised everyone was Queen Nara's final request. Princess Lyra would spend 6 months on Earth, living under Tai's protection, learning about humanity firsthand. "Mother, really?" Lyra had squealed with joy when she heard. "I get to see the oceans?" "You do," Queen Nara said, though her skin showed colors that indicated anxiety. "But you must listen to Tay. He will keep you safe." When Tay finally returned to Earth, it felt like coming back from the dead. His sister Mira met him at the spaceport, and she hugged him so hard he thought his ribs might crack. "I thought I'd lost you," she sobbed into his shoulder. "When they said the Valorans had taken you, I thought I'd never see you again." "I'm here," Tay said, holding her tight. "I'm really here." The media went crazy. Captain Tay Quan, the man who had been held by the Valoran Empire, was now their ambassador. Some people called him a hero, others called him a traitor. Politicians argued about whether his agreement was legitimate, but Tay did not care about any of that. He was home, and he was free. His first official mission came quickly. A trade dispute had erupted between a human colony and a Valoran outpost. Both sides were angry, both sides felt disrespected, and both sides were close to violence. Tay went to mediate. He sat down with the human governor and explained that Valorans considered direct eye contact from strangers to be aggressive, almost violent. The governor had been staring at the Valoran commander during meetings, thinking he was showing confidence, but he had actually been threatening war. Then Tay sat with the Valoran commander and explained that humans touching each other casually was normal, friendly, not a violation of space or dignity. The commander had been insulted by the human custom of handshakes and shoulder pats. "Your people think we are cold and unfriendly," the Valoran commander said. "And your people think we are aggressive and rude," Tay replied. "But you're both wrong. You just communicate differently." It took days, but Tay helped them reach an agreement. More importantly, he helped them understand each other. When he left, both sides thanked him. The trade route reopened, and everyone was happy. That became Tay's life. He traveled between human and Valoran space, solving problems, explaining cultures, building understanding. He was good at it because he had lived in both worlds. He knew how humans thought, and he had learned how Valorans felt. Princess Lyra arrived on Earth 6 months after Tay's return, accompanied by an enormous security detail that made human diplomats nervous. She stayed with Tay and Mira in their small apartment in Busan, and she was amazed by everything. "The sky is blue," she exclaimed the first morning, staring out the window. "And there are flying creatures." "Those are birds," Mira said, smiling. "And wait until you see the ocean." Tay took Lyra to the beach that day. She stood at the edge of the water, staring at the waves with wonder in her silver eyes. When she finally stepped into the surf, she laughed with pure joy. Her skin glowed so brightly that other beachgoers stopped to stare. "It's so big," Lyra whispered. "It really does go on forever." "Almost forever," Tay said. "But yeah, it's pretty big." Lyra spent her time on Earth learning. She went to a regular school, though she had to be homeschooled because of security concerns. She learned about human history, human art, human music. She made friends with Mira, who taught her to cook human food. She learned to laugh at human jokes and cry at human sad stories. "I understand now," Lyra told Tay one evening. "I understand why you came back for me. Humans see individuals, not just roles. You didn't save a princess. You saved a scared child." "That's exactly right," Tay said. 3 years passed. The Valoran-Human alliance grew stronger. Trade flourished. Cultural exchanges became common. Young Valorans came to study on Earth, and human scientists went to learn on Valoran worlds. But tension still existed. There were still groups who did not want peace. The same terrorist faction that had attacked Odyssey 7 and the Eternal Crown was still active, still trying to destroy the Alliance. The crisis came during a peace summit on a neutral space station. Leaders from both sides were meeting to sign a historic treaty. Queen Nara was there. Tai was there. Representatives from a dozen human worlds had come. Tay noticed something wrong during the opening ceremonies. A maintenance worker who moved oddly. A service bot that was in the wrong place. His old military instincts kicked in, and he started watching more carefully. That was when he saw the bomb. It was hidden in a decorative pillar, disguised as part of the structure. He ran toward it, shouting warnings, but there was no time to evacuate. The bomb was going to explode, and it would kill everyone in the room. Tay reached for it, intending to throw it out an airlock, but Queen Nara appeared beside him. She grabbed his arm with one hand and the bomb with her other hand. "Together," she said. They ran together, carrying the bomb between them. Guards and delegates scattered. Tay could hear the timer counting down in his head. They reached the airlock, threw the bomb through, and sealed the door just as it exploded. The blast rocked the station, but the containment held. In the aftermath, as alarms blared and people shouted, Tay and Queen Nara stood together, breathing hard. Her skin was flashing through colors rapidly, and Tay realized she was laughing. "You were going to sacrifice yourself again," she said. "So were you," Tay replied. "I suppose we have both changed," Queen Nara said. "I learned sacrifice from you. You learned that you do not have to face danger alone." Security caught the terrorists. They were a mixed group, humans and Velorans who wanted war, who believed peace was weakness, but they failed. The treaty was signed. The alliance was stronger than ever. That night, there was a celebration. Tay stood on an observation deck, watching ships from both civilizations moving peacefully through space. He felt someone approach and knew without looking that it was Queen Nara. "I want to show you something," she said. She touched a control panel and the view changed. Now he could see both Earth and the Valoran homeworld in the same viewport, 2 planets visible together despite being light years apart. It was a quantum-linked display showing both places at once. "2 worlds connected," Queen Nara said softly. "Not by force, not by conquest, but by choice. By the decision of one human to run toward danger instead of away from it." "I just helped a kid," Tay said. "You did much more than that," Queen Nara replied. "You showed me that strength and kindness are not opposites. You showed my daughter that aliens can be friends. You showed both our peoples that we can choose to understand each other." Lyra appeared behind them, now 14 years old and confident. She had grown taller, and she wore clothes that mixed Valoran and human styles. She took Tay's hand and her mother's hand, standing between them. "I'm going to be a diplomat when I grow up," Lyra announced. Like my keeper brother. I'm going to help more people understand each other. Queen Nara's skin glowed with pride. You will be magnificent at it. Tay looked at the two of them. At the crews of mixed human and Velaran workers moving through the station, at the impossible view of two worlds, connected by choice and hope. He thought about how far they had all come from that moment in the exploding station, from the scared child and the stranger who stopped to help. You know, Tay said, when I ran into those tunnels, I thought I was just saving one life. I had no idea I was starting all this. That's how the biggest changes always start, Queen Nara said. One small choice, one act of kindness, one person who decides to do what's right instead of what's easy. Lyra squeezed both their hands. And now we have this. We have everything. She was right. They had two civilizations learning to live in peace. They had friendships across species. They had a future that looked brighter than either side had dared to dream. More importantly, they had each other. Not because of debt or obligation, not because of tradition or law, but because they had chosen it. Queen Nara had learned to let go. Tay had learned to stay. And together, they had built something neither could have created alone. Outside the viewport, a ship jumped into quantum fold space, vanishing in a flash of light. It was a human ship with Valoran technology, a symbol of what cooperation could achieve. More ships would follow, more friendships would form, more understanding would grow. It had all started with a simple choice, to run toward a child who needed help, and from that one choice, everything else had followed. Tay looked at his family because that's what they had become, and smiled. He was the man who rescued an alien child, and the Queen had refused to give him up. But in the end, neither of them had lost anything. They had both gained something far more valuable than freedom or duty alone could provide. They had gained each other, and with that, they had changed the galaxy.